My girlfriend said, "You're too sensitive," when she insulted me. Toxic relationship red flags. I'm 28 years old, and until recently, I was in a relationship for almost 3 years with Mia, also 28. It wasn't a perfect relationship, but for a long time I thought it was stable, mature, and functional. Today I know I was wrong, or at least that I let too many things slide that I should never have normalized. I'll get straight to the point. In the last months of our relationship, Mia started behaving like someone I didn't recognize. The change coincided with something very specific, a new group of friends she met at work. We both worked at the same company. I was a sales advisor, and she worked in the human resources area. Our departments weren't directly related, but we shared common spaces, internal events, and occasionally general meetings. At first, this was never a problem. Everything changed when 3 women were transferred from another branch. From the first moment, it was clear they had a very close dynamic among themselves. They were confident, spoke loudly, mocked other employees without much discretion, and seemed to enjoy it. These weren't innocent jokes. They were calculated comments, often condescending. Mia started spending more and more time with them. Lunches, breaks, outings after work. I didn't give it too much importance at first. It seemed normal that she wanted to integrate and make new friends. The problem was that little by little, she began to adopt their way of speaking, their tone, and above all, their way of making fun of others. The first jokes directed at me were light, at least on the surface. Comments that could pass as dark humor or sarcasm if you didn't want to look deeper. I clearly remember one of the first times. We were in the break room with several coworkers. Someone made a comment about human resources processes, and Mia, laughing, said, "Any moment now. If he makes me angry, I'll get him fired from the company." Some people laughed. I also smiled uncomfortably, thinking it was just an exaggeration without malice. She worked in human resources, yes, but obviously didn't have that power. Still, I felt a strange twinge, not so much from the comment, but from the tone. There was something different. Then came more, always in public, almost never when we were alone. "Be careful with me," she'd say. "Remember, I see the files. Don't misbehave. I'm going to talk to your boss." She always finished with a smile, and then "It's a joke" if someone raised an eyebrow. I tried not to give it importance, until one day something happened that marked a before and after. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been in a relationship where jokes crossed the line? Let's continue. We were sitting at a long table during lunch. Mia was with that group of new friends. I came over because there was free space. The conversation was already advanced, and they were talking about relationships, expectations, and job status. I didn't participate, just listened. Suddenly, one of them looked at me and then at Mia. She smiled in a way that made me uncomfortable and said, "Mia, don't you get tired of being with a guy like him? I mean, he's just an advisor. Couldn't you find a boyfriend who's less a loser?" The word hung in the air, loser. The 3 of them laughed immediately. It wasn't a nervous or uncomfortable laugh. It was an open, confident laugh, as if they had just said something clever. I remained silent. I literally didn't know what to say. My first impulse wasn't to defend myself, but to look at Mia. I waited for her to do something, to stop her friend, to say it was out of line, to at least show discomfort. She didn't. Mia smiled, shrugged, and said, "I guess it's just habit, though yes, sometimes I feel a bit embarrassed earning more than him." They laughed again. I'm not exaggerating when I say I was petrified. I felt my jaw tighten and my ears burn. It wasn't just the comment, it was that it came from her, from the person who was supposed to be on my side. I got up from the table without saying anything. I don't remember if anyone else said anything. I just know I left. That same night we argued. I told her exactly how she had made me feel, that those types of comments weren't jokes, that she had humiliated me in front of other people. I didn't yell or insult her. I was direct. Her response was immediate and cold. "It was a joke. Don't exaggerate. You always take everything too personally." That phrase became a pattern. Every time I pointed out something that made me uncomfortable, that hurt me, that seemed like disrespect, she responded the same way. "You're too sensitive. It's just a joke." And the worst part is that it started repeating more frequently. Jokes about my salary, about my position, about my growth possibilities. Comments like, "Well, someone has to stay in sales while others move forward. Not everyone can aspire to more, right? At least you have a secure job for now." Always in front of others, never in private. And always with a smile followed by the inevitable, "Relax. It's humor." I started noticing that her friends watched her when she said these things, as if waiting for approval, and she received it. They laughed together, reinforced each other. I tried to set boundaries. I told her more than once, calmly, "I don't like you talking to me like that in front of others. I don't find it funny that you ridicule me. If you have a problem with me, talk about it in private." Her response never changed. "Don't be dramatic. That's how we are among friends. If you can't take a joke, that's your problem." I began to doubt myself, to wonder if I really was exaggerating, to feel shame for being uncomfortable, to stay silent in meetings for fear she'd say something and it would turn into another joke. The break breaking point came at the company's annual party. It was a big event organized in a rented hall. There was music, drinks, executives, employees from all areas. Mia was especially excited about that night. She got ready more than usual and spent almost the entire evening with her group of friends. For me, that party was torment. From the moment we arrived, Mia seemed like another person. She drank more than usual, spoke louder, and constantly sought the group's attention. She moved from table to table with her friends, as if she were on a stage. I followed at a certain distance, trying not to cause discomfort or create scenes. At some point in the night, already with several drinks in her, Mia started behaving like someone who thinks she knows how to make everyone laugh, but actually only knows how to do it by ridiculing others. The problem is that when she said others, she actually meant only me. We were surrounded by co-workers when she raised her glass and said loudly, "I love these parties. They're a well-deserved reward, since we've all advanced professionally." Well, everyone except Nolan, who's been in the same position for years. The laughter didn't take long to arrive. Some were nervous, others sincere. I felt that uncomfortable heat rise up my neck. I didn't say anything. I thought if I didn't react, the comment would stay there. I was wrong. Minutes later, one of the bosses came by to say hello. He was a respected figure, someone with real authority within the company. He smiled and said something generic. "I hope you're all having a good time, guys. We do all this with a lot of care for you." Before I could react, Mia stepped forward and said, "Hey, boss, since you're here, give us your honest opinion about Nolan." The boss looked at me surprised, but smiled politely. "Well," he said, "he's a very hardworking guy, a good element, without a doubt." I nodded gratefully, thinking that would be the end of it, but Mia didn't stop. "Of course, a good guy," she continued, "but I don't know if he already told you that he installed cameras in the women's restroom. He's a pervert." The laughter erupted immediately. Some people put their hands over their mouths. Others laughed without thinking. I felt my stomach close up. The boss opened his eyes, clearly uncomfortable. "What are you talking about?" he asked. "Is that true?" I took a deep breath and spoke as firmly as I could. "Of course not," I said. "It's just a stupid joke from them." The boss frowned, looked at the group, and said, "Thank goodness. Don't joke about that kind of thing." Mia's friends kept laughing as if nothing had happened. For them, it was all a game. I was already at my limit, but I still tried to maintain composure. The situation worsened when the drinks started having more effect. Mia was visibly more intoxicated, as were her friends. They no longer measured the volume or content of what they said. In the middle of another round of laughter, one of them said loudly, "But seriously, Mia, when are you going to leave Nolan? He's a loser." The comment was direct, without a disguise of humor. I felt several eyes stab into me. Mia, without thinking too much, responded, "I suppose when some high-level executive comes along for me to sleep with and gives me a raise." The laughter was general. I felt something break inside me at that moment. It wasn't just anger, it was exhaustion. It was the clear feeling that there were no limits, that my silence had been interpreted as permission. I didn't raise my voice, but I spoke clearly. "Of course," I said, "because that's the only way your salary can go up, because you don't have talent." The atmosphere changed immediately. Mia stopped smiling. She went serious, staring at me. Her friends, on the other hand, laughed in surprise, as if they didn't expect me to respond. One of them said, mockingly, "Oh my God, he's fighting back." Mia looked at me with annoyance and said, "Come on, Nolan, it was just a joke. What you said was cruel." That's when I understood something with absolute clarity. When she made fun of me, it was humor. When I responded, it was cruelty. I had no intention of stopping. "Oh, I'm sorry," I continued. "I hope you don't mind if I also say that it doesn't do you any good to earn more than me if you spend your entire salary on face creams to avoid aging and look better. Although honestly, I think you should sue that brand because your face still looks like a 75-year-old woman's. At least makeup does you a favor, though you use an excessive amount. Maybe it would be easier to use a mask. That way you'd hide your face and spend less." There was a second of silence. Then the laughter exploded. It wasn't a timid laugh. It was open, loud. Even the boss, who was still nearby, couldn't help but laugh before realizing it and trying to compose himself. Mia started tearing up. Her expression went from anger to something like disbelief. One of her friends laughed louder than the others, bending over a bit. I looked at her and added, "And you, don't laugh so much. If she has the face of an old woman, you have the face of a mime. Accept your skin tone. You're dark-skinned, and there's nothing wrong with that. But putting pounds of light makeup on isn't going to make you pale. On the contrary, you look worse with that pale face and dark neck." The laughter exploded again. Some people tried to contain themselves, others didn't. The girl immediately stopped laughing. She remained silent with her gaze down. Mia's other friends also went quiet. Mia was already crying openly. Her makeup was starting to run. She looked at me as if she couldn't believe what was happening. I finished with a calm voice. "Love, don't cry. If you cry, the tears wet the makeup and it looks like you have fresh cement on your face." The reaction was immediate. The laughter could be heard throughout the hall. Mia covered her face and ran out, crying, pushing whoever crossed her path. I followed her outside, but not to apologize. When I caught up with her, she was by the entrance trying to clean her face with napkins. "Do you see what it feels like to be humiliated?" I told her, "We're done. I'll stop paying rent and everything else. From now on, you're on your own." I didn't wait for a response. I turned around and went back to the party. She didn't come back. Later, while I was drinking water and trying to process what had happened, a guy from the logistics area approached me and said quietly, "God, it's about time you stood up for yourself. That woman humiliated you constantly. Well done giving her a taste of her own medicine. I returned home quite late that night. It wasn't immediate. After the party, I walked aimlessly for a while. I drove around unnecessarily and sat in a gas station without buying anything. I needed the noise in my head to go down a bit before facing what I knew was waiting for me. When I finally arrived at the apartment, the lights were on. It caught my attention because Mia had run out and I didn't expect her to return before me. I opened the door and found her sitting on the couch with her back straight, arms crossed, and gaze fixed on the wall. She wasn't crying. She was angry. As soon as I closed the door, she spoke without looking at me. "Good," she said. "I hope what you came for is to apologize." I didn't respond immediately. I left the keys on the table and walked straight to the bedroom. I didn't have the energy to argue or justify myself. "I'm here for my things," I said from the hallway. "I'm not going to sleep here." That did make her get up. I heard her walk behind me as I opened the closet and took out an old suitcase we used for short trips. I started putting in clothes without thinking too much. Shirts, pants, underwear, a couple of sweatshirts. Everything fast, mechanical. "Now you're leaving," she said from the door. "Are you really going to run away just because of a couple of jokes?" I stopped for a moment with a shirt in my hand, folded it calmly, and put it in the suitcase before responding. "They weren't jokes," I said. "It was humiliation." She let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You're too sensitive." That phrase, the same as always. I had heard it so many times that it no longer provoked rage in me, just exhaustion. A deep exhaustion of the kind that doesn't go away with sleep. I closed the suitcase and looked at her for the first time since I entered the room. "Can I ask you one last favor?" I said. "Can you shut your mouth for about 5 minutes? Your voice irritates me." The silence was immediate. Her expression changed completely. It went from anger to surprise and finally to tears. She started crying, first silently and then with louder sobs. I didn't move. I didn't try to comfort her. I didn't feel guilt. I took the suitcase, passed by her side, and walked toward the door. She didn't follow me. She didn't say anything else. That night, I slept at a friend's house. I had told him part of the situation weeks before, and I still doubted myself and wondered if I really was exaggerating. When I arrived, he didn't ask uncomfortable questions. He offered me the couch, a blanket, and a beverage. We sat for a while in silence. I appreciated it more than I knew how to express. The following days were strange. On one hand, I felt relief. I no longer had to walk on eggshells or anticipate the next comment disguised as a joke. On the other hand, I felt a kind of emptiness, not from missing Mia, but from realizing how much time I had tolerated situations that hurt me. A few days later, I received an email from the boss asking me to stop by his office. The message was formal and brief. Still, it generated concern in me. I knew the party hadn't gone unnoticed. When I entered his office, he closed the door and indicated for me to sit. His tone was serious, but not distant. "Nolan, I'm sorry to tell you that we must transfer you to another branch," he said. The incident from a few days ago reached the ears of the executives. They considered the situation as toxic and unprofessional conduct. I felt a knot in my stomach, not from fear, but from frustration. I had done my job well for years. I had never had sanctions or conflicts. "I understand," I responded, "although I don't agree." He nodded slowly. "I know, and I want to be honest with you. Several co-workers approached me after the party. They told me that Mia had been treating you like that for a long time. Comments, mockery, uncomfortable situations. If you want, I can appeal the decision. I can't guarantee you anything, but I can try." I didn't hesitate. "Do it," I said. The following days were tense. I kept going to work as always, but I avoided common areas. I didn't want unnecessary conversations or curious looks. Mia was no longer there, and that made everything stranger. I knew the process was underway, but I had no control over the outcome. A week later, the boss called me again. This time his expression was different, more relaxed. "I already spoke with the executives," he told me. "They reviewed the complete situation, including testimonies from other employees. They decided to reverse the decision. You won't be transferred. Instead, Mia will be sent to another branch." I didn't feel joy nor satisfaction. I felt closure, as if something had finally fallen into place. "Thank you," I responded. "Is there anything else?" He added. "By protocol, I must give you a talk about healthy coexistence in the work environment." I nodded. I thought it would be a long and formal speech. Instead, he turned his computer toward me and played a generic YouTube video about respect, boundaries, and communication at work. It lasted about 10 minutes. He didn't say anything during the video. When it finished, he closed the tab and sighed. "I'm glad the executives changed their minds," he said. "You didn't deserve to carry that. And I know it's not professional to say this, but it's been a long time since I laughed as hard as I did with the mask instead of makeup comment." I barely smiled, not from pride, but because for the first time someone acknowledged that what happened hadn't been one-sided. Days later, Mia tried to contact me. Missed calls, increasingly annoying messages. She was furious about the branch change. I suppose she expected me to do something to reverse it. I didn't respond, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I no longer had anything to say to her. Over time, I reflected a lot about everything that happened. I realized that the problem didn't start at the party. It started much earlier, when I accepted small disrespects to avoid generating conflict, when I confused patience with endurance, when I normalized humiliation because it came accompanied by laughter. I learned that humor doesn't justify contempt, that a joke stops being a joke when it always points in in the same direction, and that setting boundaries late is still better than never setting them at all.